How are you, man? I'm Gil Roth, and you're listening to a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. This is a COVID check-in episode where I record with a past guest of the show to find out how they're holding up during the pandemic. As far as how I'm doing, better than when I recorded yesterday. Honestly, the rest of the day got better right after that episode because I did my stretching regimen, then got out for a 6-mile run in the cold, and that really got me charged up for the rest of the day. And I worked my way through some of the work issues that were causing me anxiety. There's this big project ahead that's going to involve lots of moving parts, some potential confrontation. It's supposed to involve travel, which we're currently in negotiation about, and that sort of thing, particularly the confrontation part, really makes me reflexively bury my head and put some things off, which I just can't afford to do. So I am not putting them off and taking care of stuff and confronting blah, blah, blah. In other news, I called my optometrist's office yesterday to see about getting a 6-month refill of my daily contact lenses since I'm on my last 90 count boxes of those. The number forwarded to a staff member's home, and she took care of my info and wrote everything down. And then she said, I think we've got those supplies at the office, so I could go there tomorrow and put them outside the front door, give you a call when they're ready. Or I could just have the manufacturer ship them to you if you don't want to come by. And I said, no, let's go with that front door option. Because basically any reason to leave the house and go somewhere without actually putting my life at risk, I will take. It's kind of rare at this point to have an excuse to go somewhere and such, and I'm not frivolous about just getting out and going for a drive, so we're good. She totally understood where I was coming from, and she'll give me a call when they're ready. Anyway, let's get to today's guest. Summer Pierre is checking in from Highland Falls, New York. Summer is a wonderful cartoonist who makes autobio and other comics that she collects under the title Paper Pencil Life. Her recent graphic memoir is All the Sad Songs, which is sort of about the mixtapes that helped define her life. And she's done some really strong comics for the New Yorker's website in recent years, too. Her website, summerpierre.com, has links to all that stuff and her illustration work, the book club that she does, or graphic novel club that she does, and well, all sorts of things. I'll give links to all that stuff at the end of the episode, as well as the show notes and episode notes for this one. Those caveats go, not a ton. Incidental noise from cats and her kid. Her headphones leaked a little of my audio, so there's a slight echo when I'm talking, but you'll deal with it. Here's me in Summer. How are you doing?
I'm okay. I'm a little down today, I'll admit. But
I saw from your diary comic today, you seem pretty pretty flat.
It's a roller coaster. What can I say? I have been doing really well. I'm sure other cartoonists have said this, but I basically live my life sheltering in place. So right. It's not a new dynamic, although the context is completely different. But yeah, it's a roller coaster. Some days I'm great, and then other days I just lose it.
Is it tougher having your child at home full time or your husband?
Like between the two, or
yeah, what makes it more of a strain for you? I guess what changes your dynamic, at least, without saying that either of your family members are a strain person.
We do pretty great together. So it hasn't been really hard. I feel like I'm definitely the one that's mostly in charge of my son's schooling and making sure he's on track. So he's a little bit more high maintenance, but that's to be expected. But we all have our spaces, which is nice. We the first month we were all sort of mushed together. And I feel like in the last week, we've sort of separated it into our 3 separate workspaces. And that has helped a lot. Definitely.
Does and the cats kind of help mediate the space? Is it one cat or more than one?
It's two cats. And it's
so.
funny that you should say this because one of the cats literally just climbed into my lap and was like, okay, I'm here now. I thought I was alone in this room. Yeah, I thought I was alone in this room, but no, never alone.
They can be pretty good at helping mediate, those spaces,
yes.
and moving back and forth among family members. But
absolutely, yeah.
Have you established a sort of work rhythm as far as this stuff goes?
Yeah, that was something we sort of set up pretty quickly because. We have family needs and work needs. And so for me, I really thrive with a very strict schedule. And I think our family life does too. But I get up at 5 every morning and I work for 4 hours. I exercise in that time. And then I'm schooling from 9 to 2. And then 2 to 5 is my second work time. And then we have family time together. So, yeah. It's pretty strict.
How is the work?
The work is good. What's interesting is that I've had a very slow freelance life. And then the week after this all hit, I've had a ton of work come in. Yeah. And that has been actually very helpful for me because it just it gives me something to sort of focus on and get done. And it's helped me get into a rhythm, which I really appreciate.
In a different way than, again, like diary comics and personal projects would do?
Absolutely. Yeah. I feel like my personal projects and my diary comics, the diary comics I've been doing, those are sort of rough, private things. I do those the first half hour I'm awake. But my freelance work, it's not for me. So it's like I can focus outside of the home in a way.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
It sounded like that would be the case, but, I wasn't sure because everything I do is either, the day job or this weird thing.
Right. This weird thing, which I feel like should be the title of this entire experience. This weird thing.
When I've been emailing people, I've been like capitalizing this whole situation. Just the TW and S. So I say the pandemic or this or that, this whole situation. Everybody gets what we're talking about.
I know.
Which could be the title of your collection of this stuff. But
that's right.
Able to read and focus on that stuff.
That's been harder. I'll be honest. Yeah. I'm reading a lot of poetry. I'm reading, it's National Poetry Month, which for me is an excuse to read nothing but poems. I am reading a Ross Gay's book of what he calls essayettes, which are these short little pieces on delight. But that's taking me a while. I don't have the focus for prose the way I normally do. I just feel like my brain is tired all the time.
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah.
Which poets or which poems have you been taking solace in?
Oh boy, Joy Harjo, big time.
Yeah.
She's the poet laureate right now. I've been a fan of hers for a while, but her work's incredible. Also been reading Ellen Bass, who's pretty amazing. Trying to think who else I have. Yeah, Richard Hugo. I love him. And I keep going back to a couple of my favorite books of poems by Ted Kooser, and Jim Harrison wrote a conversation in poetry that's quite great called Braided Creek. That kind of thing. And then, of course, online, there's always, since it's National Poetry Month, there's lots of poems being shared. So but a good time.
Reading them on a screen versus reading them in print, especially with poems, there's something to be.
What is that?
Well, I've noticed it with prose too, that I retain more from the hard copy version than I do from reading a Kindle version of stuff or, reading on screen. But I don't know what it is. You can just reflect on things more. You don't feel the need to close a window or,
Yeah, there's an intimacy, I feel like, that goes away. Like the whole, I don't know, the way that we sort of ingest the screen, the internet, you just go on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And poetry, what I love about it is that it's short, but it anchors you. It keeps you in time. And I feel like that I sort of skip over that part when I read it on screen. It doesn't anchor me as much. I just go on to the next thing. Oh, that's lovely. And then I go on to the next thing. Whereas when I'm reading, like especially first thing in the morning, it's part of my pattern. It's just a real way to be at home. And when I say home, I just mean it like in the world. It's a way to anchor me to life. It's so, it's such a wonderful experience reading good poems.
Have you been writing any?
I've been doing a lot of my own writing, doing some haiku, that kind of thing. I do haiku comics, but not really. It's funny. I used to write poetry when I was much younger. And then songwriting took that over, and I haven't ever been able to get back into the language. And it's something I miss. I get homesick for that kind of writing, but I can't seem to do it. So I do it in comics. That's what I do. I was going to
say, you may have more time on your hands going forward.
It's true. That is true. My gosh.
Is there any, not in any sense of this has been a good situation, but any self-discovery vibe to what you're going through?
It's funny. I feel guilty saying that there are good things about this, but
yeah, that's what I mean. But
but you know what? There are things that I find sort of, at least they help. I like that it's become, our world is a lot smaller. Everyone's world is a lot smaller, which, of course, if you think about that, you get very freaked out. But I like that my family and I are walking all the time together. I see my neighbors more because everyone wants to be outside as much as possible. I like the sort of locality of life. And I actually have really enjoyed reading and hearing about other people's experience of locality. It has seemed, I feel like things I was worried about before this, I'm not as worried about them. I feel like a timeout from my own neurotic crap. So that's a good part of it. I'm depressed today, but it's not about like something in the future. It's just, I feel like I'm just tired. That's what it is.
Yeah. Sometimes it does just wear on us without a cause or anything else. If we don't have a, mental illness aspect of it.
Right.
Yeah. There are days where it's just, I don't have it. I just don't have it today. So, have you met neighbors you didn't know prior to this? At a social distance, of course. But...
Right, at a social distance. I'm getting to know definitely more people. I live in a very small town that has a sort of core population of people that have just never left. And as a result are kind of, they're used to people coming and going. And so they don't really open up to you. And one of the nice things that's happened is we live right across the street from a church that is also the local food bank. And we're meeting people through that, volunteering and people have sort of opened up a little bit to us as a result, and so we're hearing sort of things that we normally wouldn't, like, people know people who've died in this very small community. There are people who are sick, and we wouldn't know that unless we were reaching out to somebody else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. How is the local situation like that? But my town happens to be the smallest numbers in our entire county, even though the county and the state are a fucking nightmare.
Yeah.
Weirdly, we're so spread out that it's only about 70 or 75 cases out of 12,000 people, but everywhere else is rough. But is it particularly bad in your town, or just representative?
Well, it's hard to tell because on the maps, when I heard the news about a couple of people dying recently, I looked on the government site, and our town is about, I think around 4,000 people. It's really tiny. And then we have West Point, which is sort of included in those numbers. And I know that West Point actually had a huge spike. Yeah. And so it's hard to tell which is which. But, it's like 80 people have it. So that's a lot out of like 5,000 people. Yeah,
there are things, and I've talked about it in some of the past ones, where like the numbers just look abstract. You can look at numbers and they're just on a table, on a graph, and it doesn't mean anything until you see it in the context of your home and your life.
Absolutely. Yeah. And just like, hearing from our neighbor about, her uncle dying and then a friend of hers husband dying. And I'm just like, oh, that's real. That feels so much realer than any number, and we're fed numbers every single day. And I think it's there to help, but this is such a human toll. And it's really, it's weird that it's so abstract until the humanity of it shows up.
Now, your family and your husband's family know anything about what the situation's like here? Have they been worried? Are they out of the area?
They're completely out of the area. Everybody is in California. And so it's been interesting because, of course, a lot of the news reports, like New York City is New York State.
Yeah.
And it's very...
Everything above the George Washington Bridge is upstate also.
Exactly. Yeah. I know. Exactly. This is a huge state. And we're 50 miles north of New York City. So it's not like we're that far away, but New York City is just, they're just living something out that I can't even imagine. And so I've had family members being like, are you okay? We're just hearing New York is just awful. And it's the one time I have felt so lucky not to have a life or to live in a very uncool part of the world. So we're okay,
Yeah. Dan Perkins, Tom Tomorrow has been posting, lives on the Upper West Side, a couple of blocks from Central Park. And he just, he puts out pictures every so often where it's just, I am legend, just everything is empty. And,
crazy to imagine. It's just crazy.
Although it kind of makes you want to drive in.
It totally does.
Anywhere, right?
Oh my gosh. I've had this conversation with two other people who live up. They're like, I want to get in the car and drive in there. But it's like, no, don't do it. But I so want to know what it's like. Yes.
But it's not like you have to stop anywhere. You're not going to get exposed to anything. There was a piece in the New York Times about the Cannonball Run people, that from New York to California race.
Oh, right. Yes. Yeah.
Apparently the people are breaking the record every week.
27 hours or something. I can't believe it. It's just,
it's absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
And part of the thing was like the guys who set the record back when there was actually traffic are complaining that this should get an asterisk. But my take is these guys who are doing it are risking their lives every time they stop to pump gas. Mm-hmm. So, it offsets is all I'm saying. Yes, there are no speed traps, but on the other hand, you weren't going to potentially catch a communicable, horrible disease. Yeah. So anyway.
No one's safe. That's the whole thing, right?
I did think though of driving in. Just a couple of days ago, I had this moment of, it'd be awesome. Just drive in, drive out, nothing to do, just to see what it's like. But,
exactly. I know exactly that feeling. Yeah.
But it'd be kind of dickish though. So.
It would be a dick move. It totally would. I get it. So, it's funny on the weekends, like our trails and everything are just overwhelmed by people from out of state and also New York City who have cars that drive up here. And I didn't think I would feel so like, hey, get out of here. But I definitely had that reaction. So if I'm having that reaction about them coming to me, I should definitely not come to them.
Right. Yeah, they closed down all the state and county parks in New Jersey because we have too many knuckleheads, as our governor puts it, which sucks. But I'm getting out and running anyway. But New Jersey's its own state of mind, as you know.
It is.
Now, comics you've been reading?
Comics I have been reading. I just finished reading. Who is it? What's his name? I'm running the graphic novel book club out of Split Rock Books, which is at Cold Spring. And so I just finished reading My Brother's Husband, and I'm blanking on the author's name. It's our first manga. And that was great. It's so moving. And I'm so excited. We're going to do a meeting over Zoom next week.
It's by Tagame.
Yes, thank you.
Tagame.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was once given a heavy pornographic book of his.
Yes, everyone says this story.
That's belly banded, and I've literally never taken the belly band off because I know what's in there.
Everyone is scarred by that. And it's like, this is a very different... I guess for him, very, very
I'm sort of
touching.
hoping since it's part of your book club. So
very different. Although there's a couple shots in it where I'm like, this man really knows men's bodies.
Well, the great thing was meeting him, not great, but meeting him at TCAF. He'd been there a couple of times, a Toronto Comic Arts Festival. And one year we were at the after party for TCAF, and he was by himself, just leaning against a wall, looking at the crowd. And I was standing with Tom Spurgeon and some other people, and there was just this moment of, what is he seeing right now?
Yeah.
we know what his comics look like. He's just looking at a dance floor filled with boys and girls. Like, what is going through his head? I'm not going to go ask. So,
it's funny you should mention Tom Spurgeon, because he's been on my mind so much through all this. Yeah. And I long for his voice through this. I would love to read his thoughts, but at the same time, I think that all of us would be so worried about him.
I felt the exact same thing. As much as I loved him, or as I love him, there's that sense of, God, I would be terrified that he'd be one of those guys who immune compromised,
completely,
and all this. But still, his voice would have helped a lot of us, I think.
Yes. Yeah, I think James Sturm, when I were exchanging emails, and he said the same thing, that he was really missing his voice. It's just, it'd be a good one to have right now.
Yeah. You've been in more contact with old friends throughout this?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. I'm very good friends with a group of people that we all went to this hippie school and nursery school through 8th grade, and we've all stayed very close. So we have a weekly Zoom meeting with as many people as we can get. And sometimes there's people from Paris and the Hague, and from Virginia, New York to California. So we're all spread out, and it's been really, really nice to see everybody and to check in. One of our very dear members is actually very sick with brain cancer. And so that's just been wonderful for us to see him too, and for us to check in with him weekly. So, that's definitely been a thing, and lots of text messaging. And I have to say, in the very beginning, I heard from so many people that I haven't heard from, which was nice, but overwhelming as someone who is normally not in contact with that many people. And so I was a little overwhelmed at first, but now I feel like it's been settled. I feel like we did the month, and now it's sort of settling, and everyone's kind of going, okay, it's no more reacting. We're just kind of living this. And, the Zoom meetings have fallen away to the core people that I want to be in touch with every week.
Yeah. I started with a group mail every so often, like to past guests of the show, like how we reconnected this time, as well as reaching out to non-pod people, friends from my past, one each day. I was like,
wow.
I'm not going to hit a million different people at the same time and find out how they're doing. Let me just write to my old pal from college. Let me write to this guy from high school. Each day, just drop somebody a line, so it doesn't become this profession in itself, just trying to keep up with everybody. Because I'm not a Facebook person, so I don't have that.
Amen. High five.
Through that. I got to say, I'm pretty happy, just having on my terms, sure.
Me too.
You don't find out some of the crazy stuff, but.
True. I've actually, I made a postcard, and I've been sending that out to everyone far and wide. In fact, yours got mailed today.
Thanks.
Yeah. And that has been also very nourishing. I feel like this return to mail for me it's just been nice. And I've gotten a few postcards and letters back. I have a couple of friends that even sent me some poems for Poetry Month. And it's just, that to me is more doable than lots and lots of Zoom requests.
Yeah. I've been doing, it was coincidentally in New Year's, I started doing postcards, try to do one every couple of days, and of course slacked off for various reasons. But now I get back to it on a regular basis. And last Saturday was like, Ed Corin up in Vermont. Let me drop him a postcard and find out how he's doing. And just, I actually have a hard copy address book that I keep now and just write down stuff. So I've got, this pre-internet little corner of my office here where I can do that stuff.
It's so nice. Mail is magic. I don't know.
Yeah, it's kind of neat.
It is neat. Maybe it's a generational thing because we're old, but
we are.
I mean, I can remember. Don't you remember getting letters, like piles of letters in the mail, and your friends'
now you're just
handwriting?
rubbing in the fact that I'm an antisocial freak. Is that?
Oh my God! I got a letter. Yeah, go ahead. Can I tell you the story? Real quick? I got. Yeah.
Go.
Okay. I got a letter recently from very recently, actually, a couple months ago, from an ex-boyfriend I haven't talked to in forever. He's actually in my book, All the Sad Songs, and he read it and so wrote me this letter. And seeing his handwriting was such a visceral experience because I know him so well through his handwriting. And it was just this amazing, I don't know. I just felt like I went through time. Suddenly I'm like, there he is. It could be his fingerprints. I would know him, It was amazing.
Was it like the handwriting on the mix cassettes, on the mixtapes?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it was definitely.
Because that's always unfortunately how they were going to forensically track me down after the bombings. I mean, I never mind. I've said too much.
Yeah. They're recording this right now, Gil.
Oh, son of a bitch. I thought I was the only one. But yeah, no, I have 2 bags of correspondence up in my attic that was every piece of mail I received from, personal mail I received from like the 80s onwards. Right. And of course, things have, dried up to almost nothing because nobody writes anymore.
Exactly.
Except one pal of mine who did live in Bronx, moved up to Vermont, a guy I've known since college who sends postcards. And those are still stacking up down here. Like I've got them in my office and it's always, well, they're all Mark's postcards. I've got to hold on to them because he went to the effort of sending them. I don't know where the hell I'm going to
What do you
put
do
them
with them? Yeah. I went through a period about 10 years ago, especially when people were like getting married and like having babies. And I would find all the letters from them and put them in a collection and give them to them as a gift. And so like my friend Andromeda, who I've known since we were like in 3rd grade, she went to Italy our first year in college, and I have all her letters from that. And as a sort of a baby shower present, I gave her a collection of her letters bound. Wow. And it was amazing. It was amazing to see them. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a physicality to this stuff. It's just like the mini comics. Instead of doing, webtoons, having a thing to pick up and read. So,
yeah, I just did Kyla Roberts had me as a guest in her memoir class. We Zoomed doing this, and Kyla brought up the fact that I love letters and stuff. And I said, well, letters are they're a way of someone visiting you, without it being them. And I totally name dropped in this moment, but one of the most magnificent things I've gotten recently is a letter from Seth, the cartoonist, who is like the letter writer. He never stopped. He has stationery, he has a typewriter, he has like everything. But it was like receiving a visit from Seth. It was so 100% him, and he drew a little drawing at the end of it. And it was just like, oh, there's his little world. And it traveled on paper and came to me. And it was just like this amazing gift. And that's what letters are like, that's what it's so nice.
You will not be surprised to find that he is not technically equipped to record one of these remote podcasts.
He has 23 telephones, but he's not equipped to do this.
We joke that he's got the hand cranked one with the big head, the big ear horn next to it, and all this. So,
totally.
That was an old Tom Spurgeon joke, actually, from TCAF many years ago.
Oh yeah.
Anyway. But place you're dying to go. Besides, of course, the Society of Illustrators, which had your artwork up right next to Linda Barry's. I know, but
so sad.
Where else are you just dying to go visit? Or to go
it's
see?
Funny. I hadn't had any desires until like a couple days ago. I just started thinking, okay, when this is over, and there were some trips that I've been thinking about taking, and now I'm like, no, I'm going, which is, I really wanted to go to Memphis and Nashville and do some country music investigations. And I'm dying to go to the Everglades. I've been wanting to go to the Everglades forever. And I'm like, I want to do that. I want to do more national parks. Yeah, it's so funny not being able to leave. You're just like, I'm thirsty for these places now.
Even early on, one of the old men from my running group, when we were still meeting in person, 70-year-old guy, he said, I haven't been to the movies in 5 years. Now I'm pissed off and want to go to the movies.
Exactly. Right. All these things that we're like, yeah, whatever. I mean, I think that's the thing that I do like about it. It's like we've taken away all the dullness of life and all of the like, yeah. And it's more like, oh my God, I love this. I love these things. And I miss them. I'm dying to go over to my friend Chris's house. I miss him terribly. He lives 20 minutes from me. And we have met in a parking lot with a parking space between us.
Yeah.
But it's not the same, you know?
Again, that might be the way I record these things in future. You know, if I get a little too cooped up here, I might have somebody else who's in New Jersey with a car and you know, throw them a microphone and some alcohol wipes and see what we can do.
It must be crazy for you because you travel so much for work and you're home now.
Everything got canceled. Every trade show. One of them is postponed. Now, it was postponed before things went crazy, but it's at the Javits Center, and it got pushed from the end of April to the middle of July, and we're like,
sure it is.
Yeah, that's not happening. Now, it's up in the air. Other shows that are supposed to be this fall, but I've got member companies from my trade association who said they don't expect to travel till fall of next year.
So fall of 21?
Yeah, they don't think business travel is going to exist.
Yeah.
Because no company is going to take on the liability of sending its staff to trade shows or to other people's facilities, et cetera, when there's a risk of this, unless there's, you know, a vaccine in place or something else that'll, you know, provide coverage. But it's one of those, like when big companies were telling me this in the last few weeks, I'm like, okay, it's just as well that the very last trip Amy and I took, mid-February, just as this was going nuts, one of my members flew me and Amy out to Japan for a week.
That's right.
Business class, tremendous, beautiful hotels. We had one of the greatest dinners of our lives. After a bunch of great dinners with the member company and their customers, we had one just by ourselves the last night there. We come home on the 23rd of February. We already recognized things are going to fall apart before most people did. And we thought, you know, as far as swan songs go,
that's pretty darn great.
That's a good one to have. You know, if it was the last time we traveled for a while, that was an awesome friggin' trip. So
no kidding. Wow.
Everybody else has, you know, dumb road trips to you know, the supermarket or something. We at least had, you know, had that.
So exotic now, going to the grocery store.
Yeah, Amy's out shopping right now. It's the first time in a month that she's gone to a grocery store.
Wow.
So, yeah.
She's going to have some stories for you.
It's one of those, a friend called her and said, this one supermarket I go to, there's never anyone, you know, at this hour, you know, come out to Franklin and we'll, and she set it up. I'm like, okay, I'll stay home. I'll work. I'll record a podcast on the side and, we'll see what she comes back with. And, you know, I'll put her in quarantine in the garage for a week to 10 days. I'm just kidding.
Get the Silkwood shower going. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's basically what we all have to go through. But anyway, last thoughts, anything you want to share with listeners?
Anything I want to share. No, I think one of the things that I've realized is how much I love people. Yeah. And I am a total introvert. I get so bugged out by seeing tons of people, but through this isolation, I just want everyone to be okay. I genuinely want everyone to be okay. And I went to the grocery store 2 weeks ago and I broke down crying when I left the grocery store. And I just yelled out, thank you, workers. Thank you for doing this. And cause it's just like, I wanted them to be okay. Yeah. So I just love you, Gil. I love you. I'm really glad you're in the world with me. And I can't wait to see you again.
We'll make it a quote unquote date. You know, we'll figure
good.
out Mocha, SPX, TK. It won't be SPX this fall. I think we're both on the same page about that.
That's right. I think we are. Yeah.
But we'll, at worst, I'll stand outside your house near West Point with a boombox or something. And,
bring your dog.
Yeah, that'll be it.
I miss people's dogs. I'm like,
yeah, that's our one thing. Benny is always pulling us to see our neighbors' dogs when
bet.
We're all out walking and we're all like, sorry, someday we'll let our dogs dance together. But for now, we're all
Sorry,
socially
Pooch.
distanced.
No.
He's getting lonely. So, all right, we'll talk soon and keep making comics, keep reading.
Thank you.
We'll keep it
Give
together.
my love to Amy.
Will do.
Okay, talk to you soon. Bye.
And that was Summer Pierre. Go check out her website, summerpierre.com, to find out more about her comics, illustration, writing, graphic novel, book club, and more. Her most recent book is the wonderful graphic memoir, All the Sad Songs. And you should also check her out on Twitter as Summer Pierre and Instagram as summer.pierre. SUMMERPIERRE. Again, Instagram is a dot, everything else, the website and Twitter, all one word. She's done some really lovely work for The New Yorker lately, and there is a link to that in her Instagram bio. She's got some great strips about Patti Smith, Sylvia Plath, and others. Summer's one of my favorite people that I met through the podcast, which we kind of corresponded about afterwards because... well, anyway, we had nice communication after we finished the show. I got a great postcard from her yesterday with an illustration of the message, "We are going to get through this," and a cute drawing of my dog, Bendico, on the back. I like having friends. And we'll be back tomorrow with another COVID check-in episode. If you want to send me a little update to read on the air or have something you want to share with listeners, let me know and we'll set something up. I'm at groth18@gmail.com. You can find my contact info at our websites, vmspod.com and chimeraobscura.com/VM. And you can find a link to the COVID-19 sessions, which is all the episodes I've done since March 25th, almost daily. I missed 2 days and I'm still beating myself up about it, at both of those sites. And if you're interested in how I'm doing the remote podcasts as opposed to the in-person ones, it is a service called Zencastr.com, which is Zencastr, so no final E. Zencastr is $20 a month for the pro level, but my Patreon supporters more than cover it, especially since I'm not spending money on parking, tolls, subway trips, in-person coffee, buying pies for people on the off chance they, when I had guests who were in New York State, I would pass by this great bakery called Auntie L's over in Tuxedo, New York, and I would stop and pick up a small pie for them, which I would end up partaking also, and I haven't had one of those in a long time, and I'm sort of pining for that now. Anyway, don't worry about it. What I'm saying is I'm doing fine when it comes to work, and the money for the podcast is all taken care of. So if you can spare anything, go to the Patreons, Kickstarters, Indiegogos, GoFundMes, tip jars, whatever, for the writers, artists, and other creative people you want to support. If you can't think of people along those lines, then give to your local charity, food banks, whatever they are. If you can help someone in need, help them. Now, I am Gil Roth. This is April 23rd, 2020, Shakespeare's death day, I think also his birthday. And this was a bonus episode of my Virtual Memories Show podcast. Thanks so much for listening. Keep the conversation going, stay safe, and wash your damn hands.